Welcome all GetCast Now community to our weekly webinar with our very special guest, Jacob Hoffman. Yay! Yay, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob was one of my students at NYU, as obviously was Caroline, and is a fantastic guy. I can honestly say, really, one of my favorite people to work with when I was a teacher. You're really you're the combination of really good, like it helps to be a good actor. And you care about what you're doing, and you're a good person to work with. The myth in this business is you have to be a jerk to get ahead. That I think that myth still exists a lot, and it's just not true. Like some of the most wonderful and famous people that I've worked with, Edie Falco, Mariska Hargitay, Ice-T, for that matter, like are wonderful, sweet, like you walk up to them, they ask you about your kids kind of people. So anyway, long way of saying welcome, Jacob. You're wonderful. How you doing?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. All things considered, doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's been a wild, I think we've all had a pretty wild year, but all that said, I'm finding a little bit of like if we learned to ride the roller coaster pre-pandemic, I feel like now the roller coaster is maybe working without a track or rail. Still in the car though, still riding along. Yeah, things are okay. Thank you for asking.
Excellent, excellent. And just to set the stage, you graduated from NYU a few years ago. We don't need to get any specific details, but have been, it really wasn't that long ago, and you look the same. And have been a working actor mainly in theater, right, in and around the US, and have been doing some TV and film. Why don't you give us sort of the encapsulation of what's going on with Jacob?
Sure. Presently, speaking of TV and film versus theater, yeah, I graduated my whole life. I've been a theater kid. I grew up working as a child actor, largely in theater. And then upon graduating from NYU, I kind of dove into the regional theater scene off Broadway, kind of had my sights, I think a lot of us do, on like that Broadway credit. That's kind of one of those things that I continue to search for. I think what's interesting right now is seeing how commercial arts and commercial theater are shifting. So I'm curious to see what a post-pandemic Broadway, what are that kind of trickle down will look like once everything comes back. But yeah, speaking of TV and film, I'm actually in LA right now, kind of trying, while New York is still slow, trying to lay down some roots here because I've never really given TV a big old swing. And so right now I'm investing in, and speaking of the 4 hours a week, like I'm using it a lot, but investing kind of in laying down roots here, reconnecting with folks that I know in the Los Angeles area, and beginning to explore what it means to be pursuing a television and film career, especially while so much of our world is still remote. So I'm kind of experimenting and trying to make connections in this new city and in a new field.
There's certain boxes that you tick, right, as an actor. Want to join Equity, want to join SAG, get a Broadway credit, get a guest star role, get a reoccurring role. You know what I mean? There's boxes to tick that you want to hit. There's levels to this thing, right? I got the Broadway credit a year and a half out of Carnegie Mellon and have never been back. So just FYI, don't place too much.
Absolutely.
So don't place too much on yourself if you're not there, because you can get there and then you're not there. You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, I think this whole industry is about, or it can be about, building a life. And I think for many of us, if we kind of focus too much on the career lane, we can, neglect other parts of our experience that actually serve our artistry. So I would say, the opportunities I've had when I've not been working or when I've not been ticking those boxes in the order I thought I would, those spaces have been really key in kind of, creating a world for myself. Because I think Lonnie Price came to visit us at NYU and he gave this great talk. And one anecdote he shared was, for the person who says, like, the day I won my Tony was the best day of my life, I say, I'm so sorry for you, because that's a moment. And those things ultimately don't add up to much, when you look back on them. But, your family does, your friends do, your community does. And the beautiful thing about what we do is we can kind of blend those worlds. You know, our work can be a vocation, can be a community, can be a family. But I do think it's important to be mindful of all those elements and really kind of pour yourself into, you know, the work that it takes to be a fully realized person, a fully realized artist, a community member, all that stuff. So yeah, kudos to that. I agree. No, yeah, Broadway's great, not the premier goal, as is true for all those boxes. Life is short, life is long.
Yeah, yeah, and especially as actors, it's hard to stay sane in the business, especially if you start comparing yourself to other people. Again, great to have goals, right? I teach 1 year plan, networking sheet, 4 hours a week, like a plan. The difference between an amateur and a professional is often a plan. But but everything you just said about living life is much more important, especially as actors, because we don't get no. We very rarely hear no, right? You audition, you work really hard, and then you hear the yawning void of nothing, or you hear yes, show up on Monday. Totally. But those are the options. So can't live your life waiting. All right, Jacob, let's jump into your 4 hours a week, because it sounds like it's really interesting and you're doing amazing things that are not just trying to get auditions, which is a great thing to do. But what you doing, young man?
I mean, as far as I think the pandemic has been a real opportunity to kind of investigate the systems and the practices in my life and to identify which ones were serving me, which ones aren't. I would say the key to my existence as an artist right now has been diving into the remote elements of our world. So like when it comes to career stuff, like I continually revisit my sheet of names, people I know, kind of making sure that my networking list is something that I both have a hard copy of and I can add to. I find that practice actually brings all those names into my brain. It's almost like that movie Minority Report. I can kind of see like all yeah. You know, in my network. And that's especially in a newer city, it's really helpful to be able to say like, okay, so who did I submit to? What was their response, if any? How far did I get in the process of submitting? And speaking of submitting, I just find that these days there are so many digital tools that we can use. So Actors Access, Talent Link, casting networks, Backstage. So those, I mean, speaking of the hour a day, that's super easy over my morning coffee. I tend to do it at night because that's when, you know, I can see like a lot of stuff from the day has been posted. But just like scrolling through, you can create your little profile. So you can click the, you know, breakdowns that serve me and my type and just boom, 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 submit, submit, submit. In addition to, let's see, networking with folks, submission, I, you know, try to spend some time working on my own stuff. So I got like, you know, 6 different tabs open with the writing projects. I got to recommend Celtics, I think is a great tool if you're starting to write screenplays or plays in general. It's a nice formatting document that kind of helps you take some of the guesswork out.
I love Celtics. I will also throw a plug in for Highland, which is, if you've ever heard, we'll put it in the links later, but let's just leave it at Highland as well.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's a split between, as far as career stuff goes, it's a split between kind of submitting on my own behalf. The other cool thing about some of these sites is you can have your information, your headshot, your resume, and your reel blasted out to agents throughout any market you may want to tap. So coming to LA, what's interesting is just before the pandemic, I decided I needed a clean slate. I moved away from my representation team and kind of was ready to start fresh. You know, I've been in New York for a while. I know people. I was going to kind of hit the ground running and try to just, you know, start a new chapter. Then everything shut down, which made that a lot more difficult. And so in a new city, kind of looking around going, I don't have the reps I used to have. So I'm going to, you know, throw $20 out a month and just have my headshot and resume coming across the desktops of every office that's looking to bring on new talent, which is what ultimately—
Wait, you can set something up that it auto submits you? Is this through Actors Access or?
Yeah, Actors Access. I think it's called Talent Link.
Yeah, I've always wondered about this, and I'm so excited to hear you talk about it because I've always wondered if people have success with that.
It's great. Somebody turned me on to it. They're like, you should just subscribe to it. It's, you know, I think it's like $20 a month maybe. And you can do it for as long or as short as you want. I got commercial agents out of it. Basically, I would say when you're looking at these remote tools, what I've found to be a successful step is to really take time and invest time, invest money in building a profile that you're proud of. So if that means, paying the crazy amounts of money they ask you to upload video or pictures, whatever it is, but get that full package as much as you can up and running. And then from there, you pay a monthly fee, like I said, as long as you'd like to. And then every month your info is sent out to, I think it's every agency that's connected to Actors Access, and they can just kind of click through all the submissions. And then from there, I began work with a commercial agent out in LA, which has been awesome.
From that blind mailing.
Amazing.
Wow, that's blind digital mailing. Wow.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you talked when we were spending more time together, Bruce, like you were talking about, postcards and emails, and I think those tools are all still really valid. This I find to be super easy just because I click one button once a month and, suddenly all my info is out there. That's, I think, what's super cool about where we're at right now with technology is you can do a lot of work up front and then let that work kind of serve you, which I guess is
absolutely.
It's almost a metaphor for our craft in general. Like you work, and then you let the work speak for itself. But this is like, especially when everybody's juggling, how am I going to pay my rent? All the kind of crazy that's come up with the last year. I think that this is fun because you can spend an hour, a week, however long it is, and then let that kind of carry you for as long as it can.
I love that.
Yeah.
Can we dive in just for a second on your reel? Like, because you said about putting great work out there, and I always say to everybody, just like scour YouTube and anywhere else for anything like that night that your mom cell phoned and put up your song from Cabaret that sounds awful. Get that off YouTube, because your digital presence is so important these days.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's another project that I kind of tackled. I remember pre-pandemic kind of looking at the pros and cons of being on the internet, especially social media, and kind of seeing it was coming at me. I knew it was on its way. Like, you have to have an internet presence to get work, especially in commercial arts and TV film. And I was doing that balancing act of going, I don't think this is necessarily good for my mental health. So I'm going to put this to the side so I don't feel crazy. Like you said, this industry invites a lot of crazy. There's just a breaking point where I went, you know what? Like, I have to do the work in my other parts of my life to feel grounded enough that I can kind of dive into this Twitterverse, Instagram, all the things that, inherently bring stress to our lives, and maybe find a way to navigate that gracefully enough that I can use this tool that's become quite essential. So let
me jump in for 2 seconds, because Caroline is the queen of that, and is really good at that, not just in promoting herself, but actually is promoting Get Cast Now, right? And I've seen the response of it. So how do you do that, Caroline? How do you stay sane in the social media world? Because you're really good at it, setting up a lot of stuff.
Well, Jacob, I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's been what I've been thinking about this week, particularly because I obviously run social media for this, and then I've got my social media, which has kind of been falling by the wayside, honestly. And then I have a podcast and I run the social media for that. And at the beginning of the new year, I had said, I think one of my resolutions is going to be spend a little bit less time on social media. And that is not happening at all. I've quadrupled my time. But I think it's a lot of the same principle that you were saying about everything else, is do the work ahead of time. Use the apps that can kind of post for you throughout the week. I find that's really helpful, so that it's all set up. And if I don't want to jump in and check every day and respond to comments and see what's happening, I don't have to. I can take a day away from it if I really need to. But also just, my friends and I talk about this a lot, just it's strange promoting yourself on your personal Instagram, because Instagram began as a place where you were connecting with your friends and your family. Now it's great because you can connect with people you've worked with in the industry, but then you're kind of on this fine line between, this is a professional account, and then this is just me and my godson. Do I post that anymore? And I'm just trying to have as much fun with it as possible, and just keep it light and not take it too seriously. And when people have something pop on every once in a while and have something mean to say, you let it you just let it go, block them, mute them. That helps too. Mute the people, especially related to your career and comparing, which we were talking about too. You can't help it. There are people who were in my year at NYU who are amazing actors and are doing such fantastic work and really making their way. And sometimes it's not a big deal if you need to mute them and be like, I can't see that every day, because then you can't help but compare. No matter how good you feel about what you're doing, you see somebody's new, HBO Max show and you're like, well, damn. So use the mute button. That's what I say.
Comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like I think we all fall into it. I think as actors, we're so, invited to walk down that path. I think social media amplifies that. And, the algorithm also learns what you're looking at and shows you more of it. So like, we're here to promote, careers as artists and actors, and we're going to see a lot of other artists and a lot of other actors. Yeah, I think I could speak to like the things I do to balance, my mental health in response to social media. But I do think a lot of what you said is like, at least from where I'm standing, right on the money, like batching your stuff beforehand, and it can be fun. It's like a project you're telling. I think one thing that's important to remember about social media is you're telling a story. And I think Instagram in particular is a really great storytelling tool, because there's so many ways you can communicate what you want to say. Like, you have your grid. So, oh my goodness, like, how does my grid gonna look? I can plan that in advance. If you're a visual person, you can invest in what those rows of 3 are going to say as you scroll. You can, depending upon what links you share, what you put in your bio, we as actors especially are storytellers. And so I try to look at it as another opportunity to tell my story. And like you said, so what am I posting? What am I sharing? I think that's also, I've at times felt overwhelmed by that choice. I feel the more empowering avenue to travel down is no, like, I have agency here. Like, I get to choose what people see and what they don't. And I get to choose the brand that is Jacob Hoffman. I get to decide what that's going to be. And the cool news is I can change it whenever I want. Like, sure, this all stays on the internet somewhere, but if I wipe my Instagram, which, side note, I totally did. I was like, I called up some friends in the pandemic. We were able to do it safely, but I was like, I need some new pictures. I need some new content. Was able to kind of batch a bunch of that stuff in advance, and then spent late 2020 kind of looking at this collection of new images, the new vibe, and then slowly but surely was able to roll it out. I think the scary part and what can be kind of overwhelming at times is knowing this doesn't really ever stop. Like, you kind of have to continually and consistently output more stuff for people to see. And that can be super annoying. But if you look at it as a game, you look at it as a new story. And Bruce, like you've talked about, this could be part of your 4 hours. This is an investment. Like, when casting directors these days, for most auditions, they want to know how many followers you have. And they're going to go look, they're going to check out, like, this agency I just started working with. Like, they took time to look at my website, to look at my Instagram, and not to toot my own horn very explicitly. Like, their feedback to me was, this is great. Like, you look like you have your act together because of the web presence you've cultivated. So like,
I agree. When you like, I've looked at your Instagram and it's very clear. It's so coherent, like the vibe. And now that I'm talking to you, it's so cohesive. It's great. It's beautiful.
Officially, follow me on Instagram.
We will tag you. Oh, don't worry. We're gonna get you those follows. Don't worry. We got you.
Isn't that crazy?
I want to say one other thing to tie it back to as well that helps me, because I'm twice your age and have a kid and all this sort of stuff. I tie it back to money. So I look at everything that I spent on this ring light over here, and that the panning and the green screen and my reel and everything that I spent, and I tally it up on a spreadsheet, and then I put in what roles have I gotten from this, right? So I got the HBO show that I'm on now, literally from standing there doing an audition in front of my green screen right over there, right? Ding. So how many thousands is coming from that? How much does the ring light cost? And I see how much I made. I keep spreadsheets of money, like every residual that comes in from The Sopranos 10 years ago, like the $14 check, because not because the money is so important, because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm a professional, and this time and effort that I'm putting in is actually having a tangible payoff. For me, that helps.
You told me to do that once with my online profiles, because I think at one point I had like all of them right out of school, and it was just, and you had me like put it on a spreadsheet, see what jobs are coming out of which, and I was able to downsize, and it's been perfectly fine. Like, I was able to eliminate that extra cost, and it was, just like you said, it does make you feel more professional, and it really does.
Well, and there's also an element, in addition to looking at the dollars coming in, I think something that speaking of like, you know, comparing yourself to others, trying to tick all those boxes, there is something to be said for being ready when the moment comes. And I think sometimes we forget, you know, these windows where we have to wait, these windows where we don't feel as though we're moving anywhere. Like, you're maintaining your artistry, you're maintaining your brand. You know, in a perfect world, want to be ready for that moment to be able to launch. And I think that you can look at all the objects you bought and say, okay, great. So maybe I don't have an agent right now, or maybe I'm not getting a lot of auditions right now. But when those auditions come, because we all know it's a numbers game, when the auditions come, I'm going to be ready. I've got all the lighting equipment. I've got all the, you know, the props and tools and time spent learning how all this works. I need to be prepared for this opportunity when it does arrive.
Absolutely. And leads us nicely into the last two of the 4 hours. One is the Pure Coffee, which we'll talk about because I always love asking Caroline about her week with that. And then the other one is working on monologues or songs for an hour a week. How's that going? Are you finding old, like, oh God, that's rusty, I need a new one? Or how's it going?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, pandemic life has been, I don't know if y'all experienced this, but there have been windows where it's felt almost painful to like reach out to the outside world. There's been something nice about hibernating, taking some time to reflect. I'm living with my boyfriend, so I have, and he's also an artist, so I have another person in space with me. And
so you can do paired scenes.
Okay.
Look at that. Like,
I mean, we have built-in readers for auditions. It's incredible. Also, I happen to love him, so that's kind of nice too.
That helps. That helps. It's a plus.
I like and I love him, but I will say, you know, looking at that relationship in particular, it's been really nice to have somebody who's kind of in the trenches with me. You know, we're in similar spaces in our lives and our careers. And so like the talent link was his doing. He was like, you should look at this thing. I just found it on Actors Access. I think it'll be great. He got representation that way. You know, like I was able to get representation that way. So having somebody in my household that I'm able to bounce ideas off of, you know, we'll just be watching TV. You know, I'll grab my computer to start looking at, you know, breakdowns. He'll see me. I'll grab his computer to do his thing.
It's infectious, like a yawn.
Yeah, I'll say, you know, I'm not separated from my community so severely. I do have several relationships with folks who are kind of in my lane, in my boat, that I'm able to get coffee. I think I'm lucky, but I've also put in the work to really establish relationships with people in the industry where it isn't solely about competition. It's not solely about rubbing elbows. There's a real camaraderie there. So I would say, you know,
few and far between. You got to find those people. It takes work. You said work. It takes work.
It takes work. I mean, and that's kind of the outside of the acting lane work, you know, like that's where you got to invest in your relationships, your friendships. I used to say, and I still believe it, like when I work on a project, if I'm able to have one person that I take away and integrate into my life per project, I consider myself very lucky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you get one, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But, so I have some of those folks that I've collected along the way who are part of my little tribe. I will say in that kind of coffee connection, box, the flair I've added that I found to be really helpful in my experience are people who have since left the industry but were once a part of it. So I have a dear friend who's moved on to be a therapist. I have another friend who works in fundraising for nonprofits, and a couple of other people who don't act but are, you know, I have an agent friend, all that kind of stuff. Really nice to sit down with somebody who doesn't have their eye on the prize, who's able in those moments where I'm just freaking out to say, you know, all of this doesn't necessarily matter, right? Like this is great. This is your vocation. It's your calling. It makes your heart sing. And like, there are other things in the world and I'm a representation of that. And I can kind of take you out of your cycle of, oh my gosh, so-and-so's booked this and so-and-so's doing that and I'm not doing enough or I'm doing too much. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. Like, you know, we're living in a crazy world. And so that's, I think, if my like amendment to that practice has been to find those people who understand but aren't necessarily tied into the particular thing that I do.
Jacob, wrap us up with what are you looking to do over the next year? Don't need hard and fast Jacob's 1-year plan for LA dominance, but like what are you looking to do in this new world that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, dominate LA. No. I mean, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Go get them. They need some dominance. Go get them.
No, I'd say right now, you know, leading into 2021 was about kind of, I called it the rebrand, you know, looking at what I was putting out into the world, the story I was telling with my presence online largely. So that now that that's kind of in a place where I feel like I can maintain rather than create, you know, a whole new infrastructure, I'm trying to dive into my writing. And really seeking to spend the next little bit of time. Yeah, right. It's great. I love it.
It's so empowering too, because writing is hell, as you know, if you'll do it for a little while. Writing actually sucks. It's awful, but being done is fantastic.
Oh, it's the best.
All yours.
Yeah, I'm a yoga instructor and a yogi, and it's very similar. It's like, oh my gosh, sometimes my practice is the worst, and I always know that when it's over, something will have shifted. I'll feel amazing. But I think the real the goals I'm hoping to set up is to reignite relationships with folks I already know here, to kind of start to really build a community, to continue writing, and then to just get creative, especially as things are still slowly opening up, about how to kind of make more connections in a world that's still somewhat remote. So using these remote tools at my disposal, Actors Access, all that stuff, to kind of keep throwing my face in front of the right people. And then yeah, using my tools to just kind of keep rubbing those elbows. So yeah, writing, auditioning, connecting, hiking, because oh my gosh, I don't know what the weather is like in New York, but it's crazy. I'm a Chicago boy.
It's actually nice today. Oh, that's right, you're from Chicago. Yeah. Right.
So
you're living in like you're living in Nirvana. My son is looking at colleges, and I casually just say, UCLA is a great school. I just hear, you know what I mean? Because Southern California, it's
beautiful. But yeah, I feel like for me right now, it's really about, setting down roots and getting, there's something to be said for learning a city. So I'm trying to give myself time to say, okay, today, you did your little to-do list, and then you went in the car and you drove around. You went on a hike. You found a place that you like to eat. I feel like one of the benefits of going to NYU was that when I graduated, I felt like I understood the city to a certain degree that a lot of my peers coming from other cities didn't. And so I felt a point of pride in, you know what, you went to school and you learned your craft, and you also learned New York City, which is no small feat. Mm-hmm. And so right now it's like, I'm here, I'm going to work on my stuff. I'm going to, distance and be safe and get all the work I can in my little bubble. And then when it's appropriate, venture out and kind of start to understand how this other industry, this other community works. So hopefully when things do open up, I'll have made the connections with the agents. I'll have started the conversations with my friends. I'll have, again, like waiting for the moment to then prepare, I think is ill advice. So to go, okay, if somebody calls, I've got 4 scripts ready. I've got my, my reel that I'm building. I'm camera ready. I've got myself together. I'm ready to go. And so right now it's kind of about doing all that groundwork. So hopefully when things start to be a little more accessible, I'm ready to storm back to New York. It's my home. I'm very excited to return. And I can't wait to do theater again. My goodness.
It will come back. Yeah. Perfect way to end. Thank you so much for joining us, Jacob. I look forward to being back in touch again with you and hearing all of your dominance in LA.